And then Thank you. All right, everybody, we'll go ahead and get started. It's just a little bit after 1 o'clock. So we'll do brief introductions in the room, just your name and where you work. And then for those on the call, if you could just type in your name and place of work into the chat box so we can get that for our records. And there will also be a survey link that we would like you to complete at the end of the educational session, but it should be in the chat box. So we'll start here in the room. I'm Jessie Bond with St. Luke's, and I am the current chapter president.
Megan Prescott, St. Luke's.
Liesl Nelson, St. Luke's.
Tara, St. Luke's.
Martha Jaworski, Public Health.
Kathy. Kathy Pierce, St. Luke's.
Jim McAllister, St. Luke's.
David Viola, St. Luke's.
Jose St. Luke's. Jordan Baston, St. Luke's.
Do you want to do that one?
Oh, I was going to go last. I'm Brad Schneider from Qualis Health.
Nita Partridge, First Choice Health and Hospital. Counselor, Idaho Division of Public Health.
Debbie Cutforth from Howard County Hospital.
Janet Brooks from West Valley.
Kimberly Link, Central District Health. Kim Terminal, St. L.
That one.
Terry Noyes, St. L.
Perfect. So we are going to jump right into the educational sessions. We're going to put the CIC questions at the end just in case we don't have time.
Okay.
So we're going to jump right into our educational sessions. Our topic today is takeaways from the joint APIC and SHE leadership training that the state was very generous to send a couple individuals from Idaho to. This was back in December. So I'm going to start off by kind of going over one of the sessions that I found really interesting, and then Amy Ward is going to present some of her big takeaways as well. So today I'm going to start off with building a culture of trust. So our objectives today, what was that? Identify characteristics and competencies of a trusted leader and learn techniques for building strategic, organizational, and personal trust. So you might be thinking to yourself, I'm not a manager, so none of this applies to me. But the truth is, building trust is critical to our success as an infection preventionist, regardless of whether you're or not you're in a leadership position. As an infection preventionist, we're all informal leaders, and our leadership is based on influence rather than authority. So this influence is usually a consequence of skill and collaboration, followership, program management, critical thinking skill, and communication. And building trust is a big component of all of those pieces. So this does apply to you. So how do you define trust? Here are a couple of definitions. Trust is the act of placing oneself in a vulnerable position of relying on someone else, the willingness to put yourself at risk based on another's actions, or the expectation or belief that one can rely on another person's actions or words and that they have good intentions. So it's really risk based on another's actions or words. We need to depend on trust in times of uncertainty, when we do not have all the information about a person or situation and we can't totally control the outcome. Does that sound like anything we might do on a daily basis? Or when risk is involved, when we assume that the benefits outweigh the risk, but the cost of the loss will be great. So you can see a lot of this is our day-to-day operations within infection prevention. And trust is really a leap of faith in times of uncertainty and risk. And they did make mention that, trust is a competitive advantage in an organization that can't be copied. So if you have that trust, that's really to your advantage. So trust is based on our perceptions of a person's trustworthiness, which is based on reputation, your prior experiences with them, and then stereotypes. So just here's an example, or an exercise, Can you identify someone you trust, and what characteristics or behaviors does that person exhibit that make you trust him or her? So in the room, just kind of throw out some ideas on the online. If you can just throw some into the chat box. Any thoughts on a trusted leader that you know? Or just someone outside of work, too, that you trust.
I think consistency and response.
Yes, responsiveness is a good one.
Have your back.
Yes, support.
They do what they say.
Yes, they follow through. Very good. Should we see if there's anything on the chat box?
Let's go up to the top.
Up here?
It should, no, I should pull down up at the blue, and then chat box
Chat.
will come up.
Honest, transparent. Perfect. So, these are 13 leaders or 13 characteristics of trusted leaders. So, straight talk, demonstrate respect, transparency, that one came up. They right their wrongs, show loyalty, deliver results so there's follow-through, they improve, they confront reality, clarify expectations, practice accountability, listen first, keep commitments, and extend trust. So characteristics and competencies of a trusted individual are credibility, so your expertise, experience, the way you've handled this up in the past, your track record essentially. Being reliable, consistent, these are all things that we mentioned in this room. Intimacy, being intensely personal about your work and talking honestly with others. And then a lack of self-orientation, so truly focusing on others around you. So another exercise, can you think of a time where you were working in an environment that had a high level of trust, and what were some of those, what did it feel like to be in that environment?
If you like coming to work every day.
Yeah, so you like coming to work.
You know the delegations are actually happening.
Okay, delegation, you're going to get delegated appropriately.
Oh, more buy-in to the project?
Yeah, more buy-in from individuals that you're working with.
Lower stress.
Lower stress. Okay, very good.
Instant feeling.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So here are some of the benefits of being in a high-trust workplace. So people are more free, it fuels that passion, you're more engaged, provides focus, enables better coordination and collaboration, fosters innovation, so people are more innovative in a workplace with high trust, gives people time to get their work right, enables commitment in situations of high risk, lowers the cost, it tends to be contagious, that tends to kind of motivate other people, it helps to recruit individuals and retain individuals, and it improves the quality of work. And you can see that, if we have a high trust working environment, it's really better for every individual. So can you think back to a time maybe where you worked in an area with a low level of trust, and what that felt like? What were some of those characteristics or things you've noticed?
Terrible.
Terrible? Stressful?
Don't sleep at night.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really
people
high
are-
turnover,
Higher turnover, right?
Feel chaotic.
Yeah.
Decisions are made without your input.
So lack of input, exactly. So the high cost of low trust is one of the things they said. So there's low morale, lower productivity. People quit but don't stay. They come for the paycheck, but they're not actually engaged. They're not doing their work really well. And it increases turnover. So you can see there is actually, it's a high price tag for having a working environment with a low level of trust. So it's worth the effort to create that level of trust. So they did go over several types of trust. The three main ones are strategic trust, which is based on goals and strategies. So trust that the organization is doing the right thing. Organizational trust, which is based on processes and decision making. So kind of how things are done. And then personal trust, and this is really something that you have the most control over, is your personal trust. And what you kind of motivate other people to trust in you. So when you're thinking about building trust and organizational trust, these are kind of the main steps that they spoke of. So show you understand needs, establish your guiding operating principles, explain the resources you'll use, keep your principles, engage in dialogue, and reinforce through consistent behavior. So that consistency keeps coming up as a theme. So there's 5 stages of building personal trust. This starts with engaging, so making sure you're engaged with people, listening to people, listening to your customers, being patient with them, clarifying when it's not clear what's being said, and asking a lot of questions. Framing to demonstrate that you understand what those individuals are going through. Envisioning, so kind of looking more toward the future state, and then committing to the desired outcome or defined actions that you guys came up with. So in our role, we're often attempting to lead leaders, which can be really difficult. So building trust is one way to get those leaders to kind of follow us and engage with us. And then building organizational trust. I'll kind of really quickly go over these because this is not necessarily in our control, but aspirations, what does our organization believe in, abilities, how you execute those aspirations, actions, how you keep your actions focused to achieve those aspirations, aligning so everyone's moving towards the same goal, and then articulation, how you articulate the vision of an organization, and can others articulate that same vision. So can you guys think, based off what I've told you, is a culture of trust worth having? And how would you go about doing that? So building trust is intentional. It takes an effort. So you have to try. It's not something that typically comes naturally. It's going to involve you committing to making that happen. So some key behaviors of trust. I'll go into more detail and these in the next slides. So closure, completing all your communication, commitment, communication should be direct and open, resolving things quickly, respect, responsibility. So closure, this is making sure you complete all your communications 100%. And when you're having conversations with individuals, you come to a specific agreement about what will be done by whom and at what time. And if you don't have that closure, that can lead to wondering, which can in and of itself cause issues. And it is okay if you have a high culture of trust to ask when you will get information and reports, etc. And they did recommend, and this is a lofty goal, but to respond to all of your emails within 24 hours if you really want to maintain trust within your trust. So that was one of the things they put out there. Commitment, so no hidden ifs, ands, or buts.
That's within your working day, right?
Yes.
Not weekend.
Yes, definitely. So, and they did mention that. So, and I'll talk about this a little bit at the end. But leaders, you need to lead by example, and you need to understand that you are a role model. So, if you're up late at night answering emails on the weekends, your staff may think that that's the expectation, and you want to set that, from the beginning that is not the expectation. So, you want to, make sure you're being cognizant of that work-life balance. So commitment, no hidden ifs, ands, or buts. So really avoid false commitments, such as like quick hallway conversations, the nodding commitments, where you're not fully understanding what you're committing to. Avoid late deliverables, poor quality work. Try to return phone calls and emails as much as possible. And then in an organization with high trust, people absolutely intend to do what they say they will, and that helps to generate that trust. Communication, again, being direct and open. In person is always best. If you can't do in person, then phone, and then the last resort should be email. For meetings, again, always try to do it in person. If you're not able to do that, try video conferencing to improve engagement. People tend to multitask when they're on phone meetings. I'm very guilty of that myself. So the video increases personal accountability. And then always try to include all of the team members and make sure that even the quiet folks are heard and have a chance to speak. And then resolution, it's really important to address critical unresolved issues quickly and completely so people can gain closures and make commitments. The examples listed above are really more geared toward organizational leadership, but this concept still applies to infection prevention. It's important to resolve these issues quickly and completely. If we don't, people tend to fill in the blanks, which can often be harsher than reality. And then respect, treating one as you would expect to be treated. When people aren't treated with respect, they tend to be less productive. And if people know their ideas are respected, they're more likely happy to contribute. And responsibility, in the end, everyone's responsible for your own problems. So being a Lone Ranger in an organization doesn't work. We need to learn to ask for and receive help as well as give it. And I think my experience within infection prevention is we tend to kind of act as that Lone Ranger and try to solve all the issues on our own, but we really need to move away from that and learn when it's, and think about when it's appropriate to pull in appropriate stakeholders to help appropriately distribute that responsibility and learn to ask for help when you need it. And then some additional things, as I said before, they did mention that 24-hour rule. So following up with all emails or phone calls within 24 hours, they said that was pretty key. Try to handle all your issues at the lowest possible level. Tell the truth, no surprises, and then as I mentioned before, leaders must realize that they're role models. So if you are, staying late or answering emails in the middle of the night or on the weekend, your staff might think that that is the expectation as well. And we want to make sure that we realize that. And the bottom line is leadership requires trust. Here's a quote from this book in here. It says, "It's clear that if people anywhere are willing to follow someone, whether it be into battle or into the boardroom, the front office or the front lines, they first want to assure themselves that the person is worthy of their trust."
You can X that out.
Any questions? I went through that really fast. These will all be on the webpage.
It'll be on your quiz.
This will all be available, all the slides to everybody. Are there any questions or kind of thoughts?
That was good.
On those concepts?
It's hard, no, it's all really good, it's hard to do.
Yeah.
It is hard to do it. It is very intentional.
I struggle with the follow-up, the time commitment things that I think I get myself in over my head on things that I can deliver on, and then I feel really bad.
Yeah.
I think there's just so many different ways, so many different areas. I mean, it's our team, it's working with the teams in the hospital, it's working with us as a group. I mean, there's so many different areas that you have to, different levels.
Yeah.
Agreed. Well, the people whose trust you're trying to earn, a lot of people start out at a different baseline. Like, some people are trusting, that's their default, as opposed to you have to earn every single little bit.
Yeah, and I think, oftentimes we're typically the bearer of bad news, or kind of looked at as the police. But if we take the time to go out there and build rapport with our staff and build this level of trust, they really are much more receptive to our feedback and input once you establish that. So I think it's worth striving for.
One thing I think, looking at it from the other side, the people that we're working with need to trust us, but we also, as leaders, need to trust the people that we're working with. And going into that situation, our default has to be to trust them. Otherwise, we're setting it up for failure.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions on the phone? Or chat? I don't see anything in the chat.
All right, so I think on the next session is Amy Ward. Amy, are you on the call?
I am here. Yes.
You want me to share? I could try sharing the screen with you, then you can,
Or
I
we
can
can.
have a few- I'll just ask you to advance them if that works.
okay, that works.
Okay. That might be easier. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate you having me. And just like Jesse said, the coursework was really incredible. It was my first time to Washington, D.C., and APIC headquarters is there. So there was a lot of people from APIC at the course that you see in emails and different things and webinars. So it's fun just to meet them and chat with them as well. But it was just fantastic. And it was a joint leadership coursework. So there was physicians and IPs there together, working together. So it was really great also to see the physician perspective on leadership in this area that we work in. So if you get the chance to go, I would highly encourage it. It was fantastic. So just a few things. So go ahead and advance to the next slide, please. A few of my key takeaways. I took away a lot from the conference, but a few things that I have already implemented pretty firmly into my practice is what I'm going to share with you guys today. So the first thing is this coaching model, which I'm the IP manager at Kootenai Health up in Coeur d'Alene. And so I have a small team of people that I lead. And then we informally coach a lot of different people throughout the organization. So this coaching model has been really useful for me for coaching both like process improvement teams and individuals. And so also one thing that I'm always really looking at and thinking of is succession planning. I'm still fairly new in my career and as a leader. However, I know that at some point I will move on and do something different. And so I'm always thinking about who's coming next or what's next for my team. And I'm looking for other nurses or staff members in the organization who show interest or promise as IPs. And I really try and build up their level of confidence and knowledge. And so using this coaching model, I think, is important just to understand. So I have it outlined in my little planner, just at the front of my planner, so wherever I go, I have it available if somebody asks a question. But really the first thing that you want to focus the person you're coaching is where do they want to go? What do they want to do? The long-term goal. And then you bring them to the reality that they're in right now. Where are they at this moment? And looking at the obstacles that may be preventing them from getting there. And then this is the most important part of this coaching model, is having them discussing, they're asking you for advice, so they need to identify one step that they can commit to, and then how will they follow up with you so that you know that they did it. And that's where the magic is going to happen, is in that they self-identify what they're going to do, and then they're going to follow up with you as their mentor, coach, or whatever. So I really like this model. I work with a lot of students, and so it's helpful for them also when they're like, oh yeah, you know, I had a lot of fun on my IP rotation, and it's something that I definitely would be interested. What are the next steps? And so you can kind of help them focus in on, well, you need some experience as a nurse first, but then you can start looking into, you know, doing some special projects like CAUTI reduction or CLABSI reduction or whatever the hospital's struggling with, and connecting with the IP at your organization to begin taking those steps towards becoming an IP. So any questions or discussion on that slide? No? Okay, next slide, please. So then another really important thing that I have found, and just to elaborate on what Jesse was talking about, is connecting with people and teams. So people really love to talk about themselves. Even if they seem shy, they really will like to talk about themselves. So ask questions of them, and then be prepared to just listen. You don't need to follow up with another question. You don't need to follow up with a response or your personal insight. Just be prepared to ask some questions. So just some examples that I have found just really work. We have a new nursing executive at our hospital. So I had a meeting with her about CAUTI and CLABSI reduction. And, you know, at the end of our meeting, I just asked her, you know, what's your story? And it just really helps to build credibility. It helps you to better understand them and where they're coming from, what their experience is. So just what is your story? How did you get into nursing? How did you get into public health? How did you get into epidemiology? People really love to share those stories, because usually they're pretty fun if you think about your own story. Another one that I like is that we've learned at the conference was, what does your name mean, and how did you get your name? You'll find that most people have a really fun story. Maybe it was their beloved aunt that had their name, or maybe they don't even know their mom, they were adopted or whatever, and they don't know how they got their name. But the story that comes out of it is really fun. People really like to talk about their pets, so asking about their pet and their pet's name. Or where do they even just love to get a burger and a milkshake or something. If anybody has an organization that participates in Gallup, they also have a lot of really great employee engagement and huddle type questions that you can use to improve employee engagement. But really, they're just awesome for connecting teams and meetings. I've been using these at we have a larger quality team huddle. My department is in the quality division. And so we have a weekly huddle with our quality partners and risk and everybody who kind of is in that division. And we historically just kind of talked about like what we were working on or if there was like something that we were struggling with. And the engagement was pretty low for that meeting. You know, everybody kind of just went about their daily work and then they were like, yeah, I'm working on my NHSN reporting right now. And then they would pass it on to the and so just since I got back from this meeting, one of the instructors actually said, don't do anything for 2 weeks because everyone knows you went to a leadership conference and they're just like waiting for you to have something new on them. So I waited a couple weeks and then I started just at the beginning of the huddle asking a question that I wanted to say, like, what are you working on or what barriers do you have? And also, what was your first car, like make and model? And just the level of engagement at that huddle, it takes about 10 minutes longer to get through because everyone wants to share, everyone laughs and smiles, and we're getting to know each other at a much better level. And so even just reaching out by email or phone or on a project that we're working on is so much easier because there's a story behind the person and it just really helps. So I would encourage you, I know time is hard and we all are busy, but I would encourage you that connecting at the beginning of group and teamwork is a priority for every meeting. Just asking a question to make the team cohesive and get on the same page and loosen up and not just focus on deliverables, but focus on the person. I think that's so helpful. And then after this, just thinking of some of the characteristics, or if you want to put in the chat box or call them out, similar to Jesse's question, but some of the characteristics of some of the most productive teams that you've been a part of. Does anyone have any? I lost my chat box view, so I can't see anything.
If they're organized, that makes them productive more.
Organized?
All the players show up.
Yeah. That's a good one. So if they're having fun and they felt like a part of the team, they'll probably be more likely to show up, right?
I think accountability, too.
Accountability, yeah. And so if somebody knows that something personal about you, then they're probably more likely to be accountable to their deliverables, right?
I think you have to set the expectations at the beginning before any of the teamwork has been done, and everybody has to agree to that.
Right. Good. All right, any more discussion on connection with teams and people?
In the chat box, Mary noted people on a team with different strengths and mutual respect.
Yes, definitely. Just getting people on the team who have different strengths, and then I think these engagement type questions and activities at the beginning can really help form that mutual respect as well. Just because you might have some preconceived ideas about somebody that may not be true. So it kind of just gives them a chance when they might have not had that chance before. All right, we'll go on to the next slide. This one I loved, and this was, it's not showing up on the screen, conflict management. And so just taking a new perspective on conflict, right? We face conflict very frequently. When I go out and about in the hospital, I'll see people with, say, a mask tied around their neck down in the cafeteria, which I love to see. And, you know, every time, no matter how many times I say it to them, I still get a little bit nervous, and I still am anticipating that there's a potential conflict that might happen if I speak up and do the right thing. And so just knowing that if somebody fires back at you, just knowing that you have an engaged participant is awesome. You can direct them to AORN or to CMS Standard, and at least you have somebody who's thinking about it and you've got that fire going in them, right? Rather than if they just don't even respond to you, like it's nice to have somebody who has a pulse and is engaged. So those crucial conversations, you really encourage what you allow. And so even if you're the only one who's like the mask police, just keep on speaking up and just know that just because there was a conflict one time doesn't mean there might be a conflict every time. And I always remember this, right is might, and so if you have the support of your organization and all of that, just know that those crucial conversations might feel icky, but what you allow is really what's going to be perceived, like, okay at the organization. So speak up, do the right thing, even if there's a conflict. And then the last slide is just kind of tailored to that as well. And this is really about, they called it stress inoculation. And so really it's putting yourself into a stressful situation and really imagining what that feels like. So I have a staff member who just does not like public speaking at all. She hates it. She feels like she's going to have a heart attack. Her face turns red. She forgets everything and like blacks out. She has a really hard time with it. And so really just imagining those feelings, like when you're in a safe place, how your heart's feeling. Are you sweaty? Are you flushed? Is it hot? Are you shaking? And then really putting yourself into that situation and then practicing your response and practicing what you're going to say. Feeling what your voice feels like. Is your voice trembling? And can you breathe through that and make it more steady and calm? Are you speaking really fast? Can you slow down? And what does your body language look like? Are you doing a mannerism that will be distracting? Are you playing with your hair or chewing gum? Or just what is your posture? Is it open, or are you kind of curled away and really closed and not engaging your audience? And so practicing how you feel in those situations will help actually change your physiology and help how you respond in those situations. So I just thought this was really great for working with some individuals that I know specifically, but I think as infection preventionists, we have a wide variety of knowledge, and we need to be willing to share that with others. And so really learning how to do the hard things and putting ourselves in those stressful situations will only help us to grow and become better. So that was kind of my main takeaway. So if there's any questions or discussion, I lost my chat box, so I can't find it. Oh, there it is.
Okay. Are there any other slides? Any thoughts or comments from the room or on the call?
Very true. We've probably all been through it.
Yeah, so the mask thing, I just had an industrial hygienist from Seattle. I don't know if any of you have worked with him, Larry Lee. I just had him out last week, and I had him out last fall also, and he goes, one of my favorite stories is of you telling everybody to take off their masks, and you never tired of it, you never lost your confidence or put your tail between your legs, you just asked them politely but professionally to remove their masks, and so he says he's telling that story around Seattle, so maybe someday we'll get the masks off.
I doubt it. Keep trying. Yeah.
Right.
Well, thank you, Amy. I appreciate you calling in and sharing with us. Alrighty. So next on the agenda is we're doing a little boot camp with our educational sessions now. So I don't know, Debbie, if you want to give maybe a little background on that, and then jump into your presentation.
Sure. So as the education committee, we've decided, and with the results from the surveys that Susan's, there's been several surveys about what you want to see as far as education, and
We discussed it as part of the convention, but just to try to hit on a little bit, like if there seem to be a lot of newer IPs, and when you're stepping into the role, you just don't even know what it should look like, or if you're at a facility that doesn't have a whole team of people and many of them with years of experience, then you're kind of going at it blindly. And so we just thought, well, if we could just touch on a few things once in a while, and I don't even know if we're going to do this every month, but we just thought we'd throw this one out there. And we would love it if anybody would want to volunteer. We'd like to have some long-term care people, maybe a home health or hospice person, or
Know of any?
a dialysis, surgery center, any of those other facilities other than the, and even if, we always do learn a lot from the bigger hospitals too, but they already have so much in that they do that's already in place. And so this is kind of geared for the people that are kind of struggling and don't know what they even need to do to be an IP or what they're going to be surveyed on, things like that. So this is what I put on is, how many hats do you wear? I'm at a small critical access hospital, and Terry, you can just go to the next slide. And I'll just tell you a little bit about that. It's Howard County Hospital District. It's really small. We have 10 critical care or acute care beds. We also have 18 beds of long-term care, but I just kind of kept this to critical access hospital stuff. So we're 20 minutes from Pocatello and Fort Smith Medical Center, which is mostly what we do. We kind of triage, get them stable. If they need to go on, they'll transfer to Pocatello. I've worked there since 2005. I actually started in the laboratory. I'm a medical laboratory scientist, and I've just been in infection control since 2016. And right before when I took that job, there had been, in probably the last 2 years before, I think there was 6 IPs. The one just previous to me was there less than 6 months. And so they brought me all these folders and binders that all were like incomplete. They didn't even have a whole year's worth of documentation in any of them. So, there might have been a HAI folder, and then you look at it and there'd be like things from like 5 years ago and 10 years ago, and there wasn't anything that was chronological at all. So I just kind of took it all and tried to figure out what I needed to do and how I needed to do it. So you can go to the next slide now. So this is just a little one. I just wanted everybody to see, because I know there's people from all over the state. That's where I am down in that little X. So we're also actually probably within the top 5 employers in our county. With our PRN people, we have about 120 employees with our PRN. I think there's about 80 full-time and then about 125, something like that. But we're the top 5 employer of the county. So this is a disclaimer that I definitely wanted to say. I am in no way an expert in my field in very large letters. And I just learned everything kind of, like I said, 2 years, and I picked up a few things that I hopefully maybe will help somebody along the way. So if you see anything that's not right, or if you see anything that you can suggest I do differently, definitely you could shoot me an email. I think I have my email at the end, and or share it in the chat box. And I did talk to my CEO about sharing all these. I did share some policies and forms that we use, and he said that was fine. So I just wanted to let you know that. I don't know if all of you would be able to do that with your corporations or so that might be not possible. So as infection control department manager and the only person in my department, I am the antimicrobial stewardship lead. I'm the water management team lead, which we kind of did make a little committee with that, this safety and occupational health person, and I attend the interdisciplinary meetings too. So as the infection control department manager, we probably all have the same duties, no matter how big your facility is, that you're going to have to do kind of the same thing. At least someone in your department are going to be doing them. Here it's just all me. So the schedule's really easy because it's just me. So but policies and procedures, that seems to be the hardest thing, because they take time to research what all the different rules. That's the one thing that where we have long-term care and critical access and 2 rural health clinics too, I forgot to mention. But it's hard to make sure you're meeting all of the different rules. Like, I didn't even know this, and it actually came to my attention at one of my long-term care surveys. The people that are on my infection control committee is different on the IDAPA rules, and I think we'll talk about this later, for long-term care than if you have the infection control IDAPA rules for the acute care side. So I had followed one of them thinking they would be the same. Well, no, they weren't at all. So that's just one of the things, if you're dealing with something you're dealing with different agencies, it's hard to research your policies and procedures and make sure you're covering all the different regulation agencies. So we attend lots of meetings as a manager. We have the staff, I try to do staff meetings, we do manager meetings, and you're just meeting to death. I do the plan of correction for the CMS, and that takes a lot of time, it seems, sometimes a lot longer. Well, I guess it depends. The first 2 years I did really good because there didn't have any tags, but then after you did get some tags, then it does take a long time to sometimes make your plan of correction and get it accepted. The budget, we do have a budget. I know that some of the conversations here was there isn't a budget in infection control, and I might be lucky because in our small hospital, they do give me a budget that I can budget for meetings and trainings. I also budget for my for the infection control week. I do some activities, and we play games and get prizes, and we do also for influenza week, we hand out the department that has the highest infection control, the quickest for their flu shots. We do prizes and stuff for those things. So I do that. I'm on that quality team that does the HIN and the NHSN reporting and quality reports there. So that's all my department manager things. So I don't want to take a lot of time, so we'll kind of go through these fast because, you know, I just don't want to take up a lot of time, but I want to let you all know that these are all out here. If you see something in my slides that you want more information on, just shoot me an email and I can send you it, like my forms, my policies, or whatever. So on the antimicrobial stewardship lead, I took that over, and so your job on that is to meet the core elements, and I did make up a letter of commitment that I have a copy of on the next slide, and we have quarterly meetings, and we are doing our tracking and interventions, which everybody does. So this is mine. It's kind of small, but if you wanted a copy sent to you, you can just let me know. But this was our policy that we did for infection for the antimicrobial stewardship, and then the next slide is the letter of commitment that we had our whole antimicrobial team sign. So we had that on file, and that's always good for when they do your surveys that you have your letter of commitment. So then the next slide, this is just kind of what I based it on, and there's a link at the end, I think, for that if anybody hasn't seen it, but I'm sure everybody has. It's been around forever. So this is one of the interventions we do. I'm just tracking days of therapy. You can see where we're small, it's not very hard to do this since we don't actually have a lot of our EMR isn't very friendly, so I do just mostly chart checks and glean all the information and data by hand.
I have a question. How come you don't have pharmacy doing that? Why is that? Because
well, we don't have a pharmacist.
You don't have a pharmacist. Okay.
Yeah, he just comes in the morning and fills the packs, and we have a pharmacy tech, but she's also with a front office billing clerk. So there's not really anybody else.
Okay, so that's why it became your
yeah. 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 So next slide. And so then this is the water management team lead. We did the risk assessment and making sure that you have the flushing, your maintenance. Our maintenance guys are just amazing because they do all the flushing and they document it all for me, and the hot water heaters and things like that. There's your construction manager and your maintenance crews are really your friend for the water management. But you can go to the next slide. This is actually the risk assessment that I did, and kudos to John Harding at the Gooding Hospital. He we actually had gotten a tag from Fire Life Safety. I did have a risk assessment, but I didn't have the very last line that says assign responsibility. So I had everything else on a risk assessment, thought I was doing really great. Till Fire Life Safety, they want to see that last line of assigning the responsibility when they, at least that inspector did. I guess probably every inspector has their thing, but that's what he wanted. So John Gooding had just gone through his, John Harding had gone through his and said this worked for him, and he shared it with me. So I kind of stole it from him. So thank you. And then occupational health, we do our N95 mask fittings every year. Also on the safety committee. The safety committee policy actually said they would do the follow-up for the N95 masks, but they weren't getting done. So then I just took that hat and did it myself. So this is the form we use for the masks that we use. And so occupational health, I go through when they're hiring people, their immunization screening, follow up on all the post-accidents, sharps injuries, things like that, bloodborne pathogen exposures. Try to do training on hire. It's sometimes hard to get everybody as trained as I think they should be, but before they let them loose. And then their required annual training that's all stipulated in the agencies between OSHA and CMS, what they need to learn every time. This is a form that I made up, and I don't know if it'd be helpful, but this is what I give to the lab. And when I go through the employee that wants to be hired, they bring me their immunizations, and I kind of look to see what documents they have, and then I can check off what they need. So the form they get doesn't have all the red on it, but I just use that as a guide, and then it tells you like how often they should have, how many hepatitis B's, what should be positive, what should be negative, things like that. So if that's helpful for anybody, they could maybe look at that. But next slide, we'll just zoom through it though. So as part of the interdisciplinary team, we just started that up. I actually started it last year. We weren't doing this, and we don't always have a patient, but when we do, we try to get together on Mondays, and we just talk about, if they have wound status or if they have a catheter. They talk about nutritional, the dietary comes to the meeting. Social services is there, occupational therapy, pharmacy, and we just get together and have a little huddle to see if they need any extra things or what their prognosis for the rest of how good they'll get released. So we just talk about that, and then if we don't always have one, but if we do, and then if there's a new admission, we just have it even if it's not Monday. So that's that. So the infection control department part is there's the risk assessment, the daily surveillance, construction permits. I do education and then annual reports, and that's kind of that in a nutshell, probably things that you all do. This is just kind of a little bit of my risk assessment for the year, and it was really tiny, so I just kind of took the top line and put it a little bigger, so some of the things that, and I just had flinged this off of some computer website, so it's probably shared from somewhere that I don't even know, but just kind of gives you an idea. If you don't know what a risk assessment should maybe look like, it might help. And this is our construction, which is also just taken off of a website, I think some CDC link on how to do your risk assessment for your construction and give your permits out. So if anybody hasn't done that and they want to see that website, I can help you find that. So this is the actual permit that I try to give out whenever they are doing anything. So that's kind of the critical access hospital IP in a nutshell, and I did put my email there, so if any of you want like actual copies of any of the forms, or if you have any questions, you can feel free to just email me, and I can share anything else I do if you have specific questions, but I just wanted to kind of just give an idea of what we do. If anybody else has any ideas of things they'd want to share, we would love to hear from you as the education committee. You could email me too, and I would make sure that you could get a little piece of time. And it doesn't have to be formal, even with PowerPoint. If you just wanted to do something with just speaking for a few minutes and tell what you do, that would be fine too. So we'd just love to have some more input, so that's all I have to say.
Debbie, are you also the lab manager?
Yes, I am the lab manager.
I don't know how you get that all done.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention that, and I am also the lab manager.
So Debbie, if you'd like to share the different forms with me, I can get them up onto our website so we have them as a central resource
Yeah.
for folks.
Well, I didn't know if anybody, people might have them, and already I just don't know.
Oh, yeah, no, but I think if if you're willing to make them
Yeah.
available, we can get them out on the website.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much. And anybody else have any questions or? Thank you. Sure.
Thank you for sharing. So I think we actually are doing much better on time than I anticipated, so we can do CIC questions if we.
How much want to do that, Gail?
Was everyone on there?
Was there, there was a presentation, I didn't get a presentation.
No, so, Eric, are you on the call?
Yes, I'm on a call.
Hi, Eric. So, wanted to invite Eric on to kind of present. It sounds like the governor has just recently signed a bill or something into place to urging agencies to kind of look at outdated regulations and update them. And so Eric has brought up the IDAPA rules, which are significantly outdated, and wanted to have a conversation with this group on some of the components of those rules and regulations, and if APIC wanted to make a formal recommendation for potentially getting those updated. So, Eric, I don't know, turn it over to you if you want to give maybe an introduction and then kind of where you want to take this discussion.
Okay, well, my name is Eric Kopczynski. For those of you who don't know me, I work at St. Mary's Hospital in Cottonwood, Idaho. I also work for Clearwater Valley Hospital in Orofino, and we have 12 clinics between those two hospitals that I oversee or help oversee. We're adjoining hospitals. We're joined at the hip because we're owned by the same corporation, which is Essentia Health. I can tell you something interesting about me, like Amy suggested. I'll just
Yeah.
I've been to Antarctica many times. I've worked down there on aircraft. That's what I used to do and loved it. It was a great place to go and have fun. I did that time ago in the military. And yes, I am stress inoculated right now. So I loved Amy's presentation. That was good. And I also like Debbie's about how many hats you wear, because I wear a lot of hats here. I do employee health. I do workman's comp, safety, and infection prevention. So it's a big job some days. Anyway, something we just recently had a survey, and I've been over the rules many times, and everybody should know what the IDAPA rules are, their administrative rules for Idaho.